Grief, why it shows up, how to navigate it, and how to heal from it. There's not a person listening to this live stream that hasn't experienced grief to some degree. It affects us all. I'm going to talk about some statistics, how that we are affected by it. Let me share this as a story, personal story. About 8 or so years ago, I lost an ex-partner of mine to suicide. Some of you will relate to that. I also had another individual that was going through Alcohol Anonymous, and that was a grief journey for them, because they felt like they lost their sense of identity. There's so many different forms of grief. And what I've learned is if we don't have the right ways of expressing the effects of grief, those things accumulate in our nervous system, and they can lead to illness, depression, anxiety. So what I'm going to do today, and welcome everybody who is joining. We get people from all over the planet that tune in live or even watch the live stream. And I see Soren, you're there. Great to see you. And I'm so glad you've joined. Grief, although a lot of us don't like talking about it, is actually one of the most natural parts of our humanity. It's complex, right? Sometimes it's hard to articulate. It's seasonal. It's kind of like a roller coaster. Sometimes you feel like you're at a point where you've overcome, only to dip down and find yourself in what feels like the pit of despair. So it's fluid, it's a journey, it's seasonal. We can experience grief not only when it comes to death, but also relationship breakdowns, loss of health, identity shifts, losing your sense of who you are in the world. This is really common. How many times are you noticing that you are changing seasonally? You're not the person that you were yesterday. For us that are walking the spiritual path, it can often be a form of awakening to a newer version of who you are and the way you see life, the way you experience life. Even though that can be a positive experience, there can be a whole part of you that is experiencing a death as you're experiencing a rebirth. So even that, if left unchecked, can affect our nervous system. Loss of health. So many people, even in my own life, are facing health journeys at the moment. Are you noticing that even in your life? Maybe you can let me know. Are you noticing there's an increase of people that are experiencing health challenges? I know I am. When we move locations, when we move careers, here's another one. This has affected me really personally. Abandonment, right from a very early age in life. I know you relate to this, Soren. Abandonment issues or estrangement or betrayal. All of these things don't just affect the body, the mind. They affect our spirit, our soul, and our entire nervous system. Let me share this statistic with you. Over 2.5 million people in the US die every year. each one leaving behind an average of 5 people that are deeply impacted by that grief. And I'm sure that statistic is mirrored in other nations. Studies show that unresolved grief can increase the risk of depression. Can you believe this? By 70%, and anxiety by 60%. We went through a worldwide health issue. All of us went through that. There was a lot of people reporting post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, wasn't it interesting? We didn't really get a chance collectively to process that, and yet we wear the scars of it. Grief can weaken our immune system for up to 6 months or more. And would you believe this statistic? 1 in 4 adults say they are currently grieving something other than death. What does grief often look like? It can be forgetfulness, brain fog, social withdrawal, irritability, unexpected anger, really commonly guilt, I should have thoughts. I know when I went through losing an ex-partner, there was a lot of I should have or I could have. Fatigue, I spoke about this in a previous live stream last week. Fatigue, sleep disorder, we're not getting enough sleep. Often we have in the sleep state what shows up as nightmares or disturbed sleep, or we wake up frequently. And often the time that we're experiencing those things is of all this unresolved hangover in our nervous systems. The myth of moving on. Here's a myth. You don't move on from grief. We often think we've got to move on from this. We've got to deal with it. We've got to make it go away. But we don't move on. We actually integrate. We learn to integrate. So this idea that closure, we need closure. How many people always say that? I need closure. Closure is a myth. What we're really seeking is peace, not eradication. We're really wanting to find peace. And I've worked with many people that have lost children tragically through illness or tragedy, even suicide. And from a parent's perspective, you never really get over losing a child. So we don't want to move on, but we're yearning for what we want to find is peace, and we want to learn how to integrate. Now, of course, most of us don't learn how to integrate. We're not taught these things. We don't even have enough discussions around it. One of the things, when I was thinking about coming on today and sharing with you something that I thought would be valuable, one thing I noticed is that this whole area of grief is underrepresented. It's not spoken about as broadly as many other things, because we often don't want to touch those things that are painful. We don't really want to go into this area. We want to talk about the more positive things, overcoming. But what we don't really address, we just suppress. What we don't address, we suppress. And that's when we can get stuck, and we can end up with all of these unconscious patterns that we get stuck in. Might be sleep deprivation, and you don't know where it comes from. I want to talk about the different types of grief. Grief that comes before a loss. When you see loss coming, it might be a slow illness. For me, with both of my grandparents, it was dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Now that can be incredibly painful because it's a slow journey. It's a slow release and letting go of that loved one. And that's something that we have foresight of. Then there is disenfranchised grief. When others don't validate the loss that you've experienced. A common thing can be losing a pet. People don't see that as a big thing. And yet, for you, the individual, I know you face this, Soren, losing a pet, that can be an incredibly painful experience when you do lose that. Or it could be a miscarriage, a breakup. Breakups are a big thing that affect us so deeply and emotionally, and yet we see them as everyday occurrences, particularly when we're conversing with other people. So you can see right here, all of this stuff that we go through accumulates and eventually will manifest if we don't deal with the causal factors. There's complicated grief. When grief becomes stuck or prolonged, this is really common. We learn to cope with it, to deal with it. We don't want to face it because it's painful, or we suppress and we bury. Then, like I touched on earlier, there's collective grief, grieving world events. Seeing it at the moment with certain wars in the world. We see the suffering. Something that's touched me deeply recently is, when you're sensitive and you're seeing a lot of the suffering, this is playing on your soul, on your mind. Sensitivity can be, and I think it is a wonderful attribute, but on the other hand, sensitivity can be something that's very hard to navigate because you feel everything so deeply. Who that is tuning in is a deeply empathic and sensitive person. I know you are, Soren, and I'm just looking at some of your interaction here, and welcome to everybody that is joining. Some of the things that people say that aren't very helpful. Have you heard some of these things? Everything happens for a reason. At least they lived a long life. Time heals all wounds. These things can be incredibly dismissive when we hear them. What better language could we use than some of these things? So what actually helps us? Let's get to the solution here. What helps us navigate through times of grief, challenge, loss? The number one thing that I've committed to doing is talking. The power of talking, the power of talk therapy. Even me doing live streams, when I'm finding that I'm going through a challenging time, getting on here, being vulnerable, talking about some of these things, I feel better and lighter for having communicated some of the things that would otherwise ruminate in my mind, right? So it's sharing. We've evolved as a species from tribes. And as we've evolved in modern times, we feel ourselves increasingly separated from each other. Often our only forms of communication, or the predominant form of communication, is screen. I know you're looking at me on a screen right now, but often that can be disconnecting. And of course, digital means are great, but we don't want them to be the only means of our communication. Local networks. How can you be, even if it's simple interactions, just by simply interacting with people and being seen and heard has great effects on your nervous system, on your mental life. Naming and validating your feelings. When was the last time you were vulnerable? Vulnerable with another person. And it's okay to allow joy and sorrow to coexist. So when it comes to talk therapy, one of the best ways, I think, I know there are so many different methods out there, and I've advocated lots of different methods and workshops, and I've worked with thousands of people over the years through different methods and workshops. The most important method is someone's ability to be seen and heard in a talk therapy session. Now, there's different forms of talk therapy, but it is incredibly, I had this experience earlier today because I regularly see somebody. My showing up, and it was in an online space, showing up and just expressing some of the things I've held on to and expressing it and being heard and seen by another person incredibly was like a weight lifted because I'm releasing. It's kind of like a pressure cooker. We bottle down our emotions. We push down our thoughts and feelings, our worries, our cares. And eventually, if we don't release, they build up until they explode. And sometimes those eruptions can be quite devastating personally and for those around us. That's why I encourage people to have avenues to talk and to release. It's only been in the last month that I learnt of 4 people within a reasonably close social circle of mine that had, 2 of them had taken their lives and 2 had attempted to take their lives. And the other 2 are fighting for their lives. Where would those people have been if they could have dealt with the grief that they were facing, if they could have spoken about the hidden grief? Now, here is the one that is often really insidious, is the hidden grief. How does it present itself? Often people say, why am I exhausted all of the time? Why can't I focus? Why do I feel so disconnected? Unacknowledged grief becomes emotional clutter in the nervous system. But grief can also be your teacher. Grief is one of the most natural aspects of your humanity. It's what makes you human. And we don't want to suppress it. We want to be able to integrate it in our experience. See, we just aren't taught how to do these things. Or we don't allow ourselves to be heard by another person, held by another person in a safe, therapeutic space. Now, I think we've come a long way in the last 20 years. I'm currently reading an autobiography by a man who is sharing a lot about some sexual abuse that he had gone through. And he was talking about this during the period of the 70s and just how often it was when it came to sexual abuse when a young, and in his case, he told people about it and he wasn't believed. And the abuse went on for many years because he wasn't believed. I don't think people, I think people take those statements by children a lot more seriously these days than used to. So in a lot of ways, we have come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go. The more we talk, the more we open up, the more we have dialogue, the better we all are. A problem shared is a problem halved. Opening our heart. Now, what I do is I want to open it up for some questions right now. Maybe you're facing something in your life and you've got a question that you want to bring here in the live comments. Got a few people here on the live, and even if you're watching the replay, I might give people a moment to do that. I'm offering one-on-one talk therapy. Now, what I'm doing with people is I'm offering a free 30-minute session with me. That gives you an opportunity to see if I'm the right fit for you, if you feel comfortable, if you feel like that is something you want to progress with, then we can talk about it. Otherwise, I'm offering that as a space for you to be seen and heard, and maybe that's going to be enough as a starting point, and I can advise certain things for you. Now, you will find that link in the video description. And for the purposes of your convenience, I will just quickly grab that link for you and share it. I've got it here somewhere in my notes. Just bear with me. You will find it in the video description, and I'm going to pop in my email as well, and you can email me directly if you want to. I always like making my email readily available to people because I think a lot of people, someone said, my father passed deep in grief, so this is confirmation. You know, I'm sorry to hear you losing a parent. I know firsthand what it's like. You know, I lost a stepfather who basically raised me. He died in a 3-month period of a very advanced illness. He was exposed to asbestos, and in a very short time of just having some back issues, he was essentially emaciated and lost all body fat and went into hospice and died. So I know how confronting death is. As I said, I've lost people to suicide. I've lost people to illness. It's so important to have a place to process. I hope you reach out to me and have some talk therapy. You know, it's amazing. Even I experienced this personally today. It's amazing how much difference it makes just by having somebody listen to you. Ever increasingly, we're living in a society that's more and more disconnected through advancements in technology and social media. We're not getting an opportunity to be seen and heard. That's why I want to work with people one-on-one, really giving people the space. I've stopped doing a lot of the group work now to work with people one-on-one because I know that that is a better way to add value to people's lives than just offer a group package or offer a workshop where they're in there with other people. It's what's been most effective in my own journey is the one-on-one work. And it's not so much that the practitioner is really doing anything. All they are doing is holding space for you to be seen and heard and for you to work through in a safe environment all the things that you're holding on to or that you're not dealing with. All right, we're about at that time where we end. If you want to work with me, I'd love for you to work with me. If you've got some more ideas of live streams that you think will be helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback as we create a space, a community here that is growing, that is healthy, and that is adding value to people. And so everybody needs God. Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. Now, not everybody believes in God, but I always say this: God believes in everybody, right? And we all are loved. Not everybody has a faith like I do, or like Soren does, or others do. But let me tell you, having faith is a game changer. It really is. It gives you a perspective. It helps you navigate and not feel alone, particularly when we're dealing with grief. Isn't that one of the things that's so important? And when we're facing grief, that we have something to believe in, or someone to believe in us, somebody to hold space, to be able to feel held by, even when life around us feels like it's not. Brendan, I agree with you. Absolutely. I'm going to give you a love heart for that one. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I do think, it's the remedy and the answer to so much, and what is God? If you can summarize what God is God? Does anyone have the answer for this? God is what? I think all faiths say that same thing. Is love. Love. And love is, I think, what we all need more of in our lives. Thank you for joining me for this live stream today. Even if this has spoken to one person, know that you're not alone. Know that you can come and see me if you feel comfortable, or I can refer you on to somebody else. But come and talk about the issues. I think this is a great reminder to share those struggles, those grievances, those things that are and have been unspoken. And you'll be surprised how better you feel just when you share and you're seen and you're heard. I'll see you next time I do a live. Hopefully I'll be on here again, same time tomorrow. Peace and love to you all.